The wind howled outside the quaint toy shop on the corner of a quiet street. A tattered sign above the door read, "Grimm's Playthings," its faded letters barely legible under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Inside, shelves were stacked with toys of every imaginable variety. Stuffed animals with button eyes, wooden trains with peeling paint, and dolls frozen in cheerful poses. The shop, once a bustling hub of childhood dreams, now felt like a place that time had forgotten. It was here that the townsfolk first encountered the Grow With Me dolls. The store had been closed for months, but on an unassuming Monday morning, it reopened. The window displays, usually dusty and neglected, now featured pristine dolls in elegant boxes, each labeled with the promise, "A friend for life, just like you." Word spread quickly through the town, fueled by whispers of their uncanny lifelike quality. By the time evening fell, a line had formed outside the shop. Parents, clutching the hands of their eager children, shuffled inside. The dolls were exquisite, porcelain faces painted with delicate care, eyes that seemed to follow movement, and a peculiar softness to their synthetic hair that felt disturbingly real. They came with a curious instruction booklet. Treat your doll with love, and it will love you back. Among the crowd was Anna Winters, a single mother to 6-year-old Masha. Life had not been kind to Anna. Since her husband's untimely death, she had struggled to keep a roof over their heads. Masha, once a vivacious child, had grown quiet and withdrawn. Anna hoped the doll would lift her daughter's spirits. When they reached the counter, the shopkeeper, a pale, thin man with an unervingly calm demeanor, smiled warmly. "This one is perfect for her," he said, placing a doll with strawberry blonde hair and a pale blue dress into Masha's trembling hands. It's almost as if they were made for each other. That night, Anna placed the doll on the shelf in Masha's room. Masha named her Clara. "Good night, Clara," Masha whispered before falling asleep. Anna watched from the doorway, relieved to see her daughter smile for the first time in weeks. The days that followed were filled with an unusual joy. Masha played with Clara constantly, whispering secrets to her and carrying her everywhere. Anna was thrilled to see her daughter so happy. But strange things began to happen. Clara seemed to move on her own. At first, it was subtle, a shift in her position on the shelf, or her head tilted in a slightly different direction. Anna dismissed it as Masha's doing. But one morning, as she passed by Masha's room, she heard a low murmur. Peeking through the door, she saw her daughter, sitting cross-legged on the floor, Clara's porcelain face inches from her own. Masha was speaking softly, and though Anna couldn't make out the words, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. "Masha, who are you talking to?" Anna asked, stepping inside. Her daughter flinched, clutching Clara tightly. "No one," Masha replied, her voice defensive. "Clara and I are just playing." Anna smiled uneasily and left the room, but the feeling lingered. Over the next few days, more unsettling events occurred. Anna often found Clara in places she was certain Masha hadn't taken her. The kitchen table, the bathroom sink, even the edge of Anna's own bed. Once, she swore she heard a faint giggle echo through the house late at night. She told herself it was the wind or her imagination. Things escalated when Anna woke one night to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She assumed it was Masha, but when she checked, her daughter was fast asleep, Clara cradled in her arms. The footsteps continued, light and deliberate. Anna's heart raced as she followed the sound, only to find the hallway empty. She returned to her bedroom, locking the door behind her. Masha's behavior grew stranger, too. She became protective of Clara, snapping at Anna if she touched the doll or even mentioned it. "She doesn't like you," Masha said one evening, glaring at her mother with an intensity Anna had never seen before. "Who doesn't like me?" Anna asked, her voice wavering. "Clara," Masha replied matter-of-factly. "She says you don't love me enough." Anna froze, her blood running cold. "Masha, that's not true. You know I love you more than anything." Masha shrugged, her attention already back on Clara. "She says you'll see." That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every creak of the house sending a jolt of fear through her. At some point, exhaustion overtook her. When she awoke, it was still dark. A A strange sensation prickled at the edge of her awareness, a feeling of being watched. Turning her head, she nearly screamed. Clara was sitting on her nightstand, her glassy eyes fixed on Anna's face. Gripping the doll, Anna stormed into the living room and tossed it onto the couch. She needed to confront Masha, but when she opened her daughter's door, she found the bed empty. Panic set in as she searched the house, calling Masha's name. She finally found her in the basement, standing motionless in the middle of the room. Clara was in her arms again. "Masha, what are you doing down here?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. Masha turned slowly, her eyes glassy and unfocused. "Clara wanted to show me something," she said in a monotone. "Show you what?" Anna demanded. Before Masha could answer, the basement lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. A soft, childlike giggle echoed through the room, and Anna felt her stomach drop. When the lights came back on, Clara was no longer in Masha's arms. She was standing on her own, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her painted lips curling into a grotesque smile. "She says it's your turn," Masha whispered, her voice not quite her own. Anna whirled around, the flickering fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. The giggle echoed again, high and lilting, and this time it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Her grip tightened on the fire poker as her eyes darted around the room. The giggle was unmistakably Masha's, but it wasn't coming from her daughter. It was Clara, or what remained of her, taunting from the edges of the darkness. "Masha!" Anna called out, panic lacing her voice. She bolted back toward the kitchen, where she had left her daughter. The door was ajar. Her heart sank as she stepped inside. The kitchen was empty. "No, no, no," Anna muttered, her pulse thundering in her ears. She searched every corner, calling Masha's name, but there was no sign of her. The room seemed untouched, the table still barricading the door. It was as though Masha had vanished into thin air. A faint sound, a shuffle, a whisper, caught Anna's attention. It was coming from upstairs. Her chest tightened. She didn't want to go back up there, not after what had happened. But she didn't have a choice. She had to find Masha. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the fire poker like a lifeline and ascended the stairs. The house felt different now, darker, colder, and somehow larger. The familiar walls seemed to stretch endlessly, the shadows yawning into strange shapes. At the top of the stairs, Anna hesitated. She could hear faint voices, distorted and overlapping, like a chorus of children whispering secrets. The sound came from Masha's room. Steeling herself, Anna pushed the door open. The room was bathed in an eerie glow, the soft light emanating from nowhere and everywhere. In the center of the room stood Masha, her back to Anna. She was cradling something in her arms. "Masha," Anna said cautiously, stepping inside. "Sweetheart, it's Mommy. Come here." Masha didn't move. Her small frame was rigid, her head tilted downward as though staring at whatever she held. Anna moved closer, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she was only a few feet away, Masha turned. Anna gasped. Her daughter's face was pale, her eyes dull and glassy. In her arms was Clara, whole and unscathed, her porcelain face pristine as if the fire had never touched her. Masha smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was Clara's. "She's not gone, Mommy," Masha said, her voice a hollow echo. "She'll never be gone. She's part of me now." Anna's knees nearly buckled as a wave of dread washed over her. She reached out, her hand trembling. "Masha, give me the doll. Please." Masha took a step back, clutching Clara tighter. "She doesn't want to leave," she said. "She's my best friend. She loves me more than you do." "That's not true," Anna cried, tears streaming down her face. "I love you more than anything. Masha, you have to let her go." Masha's face twisted in anguish, and for a fleeting moment, Anna saw her daughter, her real daughter, struggling to break through. But then Clara's voice came, cold and cruel, speaking through Masha's lips. "You're too late," the doll said. "She's mine now. She invited me in, and I never leave." Anna screamed, lunging forward. She grabbed the doll, pulling it from Masha's arms. Her daughter let out a piercing shriek, collapsing to the floor as Anna wrenched Clara away. The doll writhed in her grip, its porcelain face cracking and shifting. "You can't save her," Clara hissed. "She belongs to me." Ignoring the voice, Anna ran. She didn't stop until she reached the backyard. The fire poker was still in her hand, and she swung it with all her might, shattering Clara's head into pieces. The doll fell limp, its broken body motionless on the ground. But then the laughter started again. This time it wasn't just Clara's. It was a cacophony of voices, children's laughter blending into a horrifying symphony that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The shards of Clara's face began to move, skittering across the ground like insects. They reassembled, forming not one doll, but dozens, each one identical to Clara. Anna stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. The Clara dolls stood in a circle, their glassy eyes fixed on her. And then, as one, they stepped forward. "No," Anna whispered, shaking her head. "This isn't real. This can't be real." The dolls advanced, their small feet crunching over the broken shards of porcelain. Anna swung the fire poker wildly, but it was no use. They were everywhere, swarming her like a living nightmare. She felt tiny hands grabbing at her, pulling her down, their cold fingers pressing against her skin. The last thing Anna saw before the world went black was Masha standing in the doorway, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Good night, Mommy," Masha said, her voice eerily calm. And then the darkness consumed her. Anna awoke to silence. Her body felt heavy, her movements sluggish. She tried to sit up, but her limbs wouldn't obey. Panic set in as she realized she couldn't move. She was lying on a hard surface, her head tilted at an awkward angle. The air smelled of dust and wood polish. When she finally managed to open her eyes, she saw a distorted reflection staring back at her. It was her face, but it wasn't right. The features were too smooth, too perfect. She realized with dawning horror that she wasn't looking at her reflection. She was looking at herself, her real self, through the glassy eyes of a doll. Anna tried to scream, but no sound came. She was trapped, her consciousness imprisoned within the porcelain shell of a doll's body. Across the room, she saw Masha sitting on the floor, cradling a new doll in her arms. "Don't worry, Clara," Masha said softly, stroking the doll's hair. "Mommy loves you now." The room was quiet save for the sound of Anna's shallow breathing and Masha's muffled sobs. They sat huddled together in the corner, far from the door, the shadows of the room pressing in on them. Anna's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Dolls didn't walk, dolls didn't talk, and they certainly didn't hunt people down. Yet the impossible was happening, and she had no idea how to stop it. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled. Anna tensed, her grip tightening around Masha. A soft tapping followed, rhythmic and deliberate, as if Clara were playing a twisted game of patience. Anna clamped a hand over Masha's mouth to keep her quiet, though her daughter was already frozen with fear. The tapping stopped. Anna strained to hear through the oppressive silence, her heart pounding so loudly it seemed to echo in her ears. Then came the voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Masha," it called sweetly, almost sing-song. "Let me in. I just want to play." Masha whimpered against Anna's hand, and Anna felt her resolve waver. What was she supposed to do? She couldn't call for help. She couldn't run. They were trapped. The dresser in front of the door creaked, as if something were pressing against it. Slowly, methodically, the sound grew louder, the scraping of wood against wood filling the room. Anna's pulse raced as she realized the doll was pushing its way inside. Desperate, she scanned the room for anything she could use to defend them. Her eyes landed on a heavy lamp on the nightstand. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. She grabbed it, holding it tightly as she braced herself. The dresser toppled with a deafening crash, the door swinging open. Clara stood in the doorway, her cracked face partially obscured by shadows. She stepped into the room with an unnatural grace, her movements deliberate and unsettling. "You shouldn't have locked me out," Clara said, her voice echoing with a distorted duality. "That wasn't very kind." Anna didn't wait. She hurled the lamp with all her strength, the base striking Clara squarely in the chest. The The doll stumbled backward, but didn't fall. Instead, she tilted her head, as if curious, then stepped forward again. "That won't work," Clara said, her tone almost playful. "You can't break me. I'm a part of her now." Anna's stomach churned. A part of her? What did that mean? She glanced at Masha, whose tear-streaked face was pale and vacant. She looked dazed, as though Clara's presence had sapped the life out of her. Clara turned her head toward Masha, her expression softening in a grotesque mimicry of affection. "Don't you see, Anna? I'm here to take care of her, to love her the way you can't. Get away from her!" Anna screamed, lunging forward. She grabbed Clara and hurled her to the ground, stomping on her with all her strength. The doll's porcelain face shattered, shards scattering across the floor. For a moment, Anna thought she had won, but then the pieces began to move, skittering across the floor like insects. The shards reassembled themselves with horrifying precision, reforming Clara's face. Her smile was wider now, more jagged and inhuman. "You can't get rid of me," Clara said, her voice colder, harsher. "I was made for her, and soon you'll see." Anna grabbed Masha and bolted from the room, slamming the door behind them. She didn't stop running until they reached the kitchen. She locked the door and pushed the kitchen table in front of it, though she knew it wouldn't hold Clara for long. "Masha, listen to me," Anna said, gripping her daughter's shoulders. "I need you to tell me everything about Clara. Did she say anything to you? Did she ask you to do something?" Masha sniffled, her wide eyes glistening with tears. "She just wanted to play," she said, her voice small. "She said she wanted to be my best friend forever. And she said you didn't love me enough." Anna's heart sank. This wasn't just a doll. Clara was feeding on Masha's emotions, exploiting her loneliness and fears. And now, it seemed, she was determined to replace Anna entirely. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, slow and deliberate. Clara was coming. Anna's mind raced. There had to be a way to stop this. Something that could break whatever hold the doll had over her daughter. Her eyes fell on the old fireplace in the corner of the kitchen. The poker leaned against the stone hearth, and a stack of firewood was piled neatly nearby. An idea began to form in her mind. "Masha, stay here," Anna said, grabbing the poker. "Whatever happens, don't open the door." "No, Mommy," Masha cried, clinging to her. "Don't leave me." "I won't," Anna promised, though she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. She gently pried Masha's arms away and stepped into the hallway, poker in hand. Clara was waiting. She stood at the end of the hall, her glassy eyes gleaming in the dim light. Her smile was gone, replaced by an expression of pure malice. "You can't stop me," Clara said, her voice dripping with contempt. "I'm already inside her. I'll always be inside her." "We'll see about that," Anna snarled, charging forward. Clara moved with inhuman speed, darting to the side as Anna swung the poker. The metal struck the wall with a resounding clang, but Anna didn't stop. She swung again and again, each strike narrowly missing the doll. Clara laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the house. "You're only making this harder for her," she taunted. "She'll hate you for what you're doing." Anna didn't listen. She backed Clara into the living room, her eyes scanning the room for the next step in her plan. The fireplace. If she could get Clara into the fire, maybe, just maybe, this nightmare would end. Summoning all her strength, Anna lunged at Clara, knocking her to the ground. She grabbed the doll and dragged her toward the hearth, ignoring the scratches and bites Clara inflicted with her tiny hands and teeth. The fire roared to life as Anna shoved Clara into the flames. The doll let out an ear-piercing scream, the sound reverberating through the house. The porcelain cracked and blackened, the paint peeling away as the flames consumed her. Anna watched, breathless, as Clara's form dissolved into ash. The scream faded, replaced by an eerie silence. But the victory was short-lived. A soft, childlike giggle echoed from the shadows behind her, and Anna realized with dawning horror that the nightmare was far from over. Anna's breath caught in her throat as the doll moved, a deliberate shift of its head as if acknowledging her presence. Clara's porcelain face, once beautiful, now seemed grotesque in the dim light of the basement. The smile on her painted lips twisted further, transforming into something that no doll should be able to do. It was as though the face itself was alive, stretching the limits of its fragile material. "Masha," Anna whispered, her voice trembling. "Come to me." Slowly. Masha didn't move. Her little body stood frozen, her gaze locked on Clara. The air in the basement seemed to grow heavier, thick with a strange, unnameable tension. Then, without warning, Masha giggled, a sound too high-pitched, too alien. Anna's heart sank. That wasn't her daughter's voice. Before Anna could take a step toward her, the basement lights flickered again. Shadows twisted along the walls, forming shapes that seemed to writhe and pulse like living things. A sudden chill washed over her, and she realized she could see her breath in the frigid air. "Masha!" she cried, rushing forward. Her daughter turned her head toward her, but the expression on her face was vacant, as if something had drained the life from her. When Anna grabbed her by the shoulders, Masha collapsed into her arms, her body limp and unresponsive. Anna scooped her up and fled the basement, glancing back only once to see Clara standing in the center of the room, motionless but somehow radiating a sinister presence. Once upstairs, Anna slammed the basement door shut and locked it. Her hands shook as she placed Masha on the couch and checked her pulse. It was faint but steady. "Masha, wake up," Anna pleaded, shaking her gently. After a few agonizing moments, her daughter stirred, blinking up at her mother with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy," Masha murmured, her voice weak. "What happened?" "You fainted," Anna lied, brushing her daughter's hair back. "You're okay now. Just rest here." "But Clara," Masha began, sitting up. "No," Anna snapped, harsher than she intended. Masha flinched, and Anna softened her tone. "Clara's staying in the basement for now. She's broken, sweetie. It's not safe to play with her anymore." Masha's lips trembled, tears welling in her eyes. "But she's my friend." Anna hugged her tightly, her mind racing. Whatever was happening, it was beyond her understanding. The doll wasn't just a toy. It was something far worse. She had to get rid of it. Tonight, after putting Masha to bed, Anna retrieved a flashlight and a heavy-duty garbage bag. She crept down to the basement, every step feeling like a journey into the jaws of some unseen beast. The door creaked open, and the beam of her flashlight cut through the darkness, landing on Clara. The doll was exactly where she had left it, but its position had changed. It was now seated on the dusty floor, legs crossed, hands folded neatly in its lap. Anna swallowed hard and approached it. The closer she got, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if the very air around the doll resisted her presence. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, half expecting it to spring to life. But Clara remained still. Without wasting another second, Anna stuffed the doll into the garbage bag and tied it shut with a series of frantic knots. She carried it up the stairs, through the kitchen, and out into the backyard where the garbage bins waited. The night was cold and silent, the stars hidden behind thick clouds. She threw the bag into the bin and slammed the lid shut, breathing a sigh of relief. "It's over," she whispered to herself, though the words felt hollow. But as she turned to go back inside, she froze. The living room window glowed with a faint light, and she could see Masha standing there, staring at her. No, not at her. At something behind her. A soft rustling sound came from the garbage bin. Anna whipped around, her heart pounding. The lid rattled violently, and then, with a deafening crash, it flew open. The bag inside writhed as if something were clawing its way out. Anna stumbled backward, her mind screaming at her to run, but her legs refused to obey. The bag tore open from the inside, and Clara emerged, her porcelain face cracked but intact, her glassy eyes gleaming in the darkness. She stood on the edge of the garbage bin, impossibly balanced, her small frame exuding an aura of malevolence. "You shouldn't have done that," Clara said, her voice a distorted echo of Masha's. Anna screamed, bolting for the house. She locked the door behind her, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. But the house no longer felt safe. Every shadow seemed alive, every creak of the floorboards a threat. She grabbed the phone to call the police, but the line was dead. "Mommy!" Masha's voice came from the top of the stairs. Anna turned to see her daughter clutching the banister, her face pale. "Why is Clara in the backyard?" "Stay upstairs," Anna shouted, her voice cracking. But Masha didn't move. Instead, she pointed to the front door. Anna followed her daughter's gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. The door was wide open, swinging gently in the night breeze. Standing in the doorway was Clara, her cracked face twisted into that grotesque smile once more. "She's not happy," Masha whispered, her voice eerily calm. "She doesn't like being thrown away." Anna grabbed Masha and bolted up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door shut behind them. She pushed a dresser in front of it for good measure and pulled Masha close. The little girl was trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, I'm scared," she sobbed. "So am I," Anna admitted, holding her tightly. But deep down, she knew that fear alone wouldn't save them. Clara wasn't just a doll. She was something far older, far darker, and far more dangerous. And she wasn't done with them yet. Anna's existence in the porcelain shell was a waking nightmare. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, but her mind was alive, screaming in a void where no one could hear her. The room seemed vast and distorted through her glassy eyes, every sound amplified and warped. She could only watch as Masha played on the floor, the girl's demeanor eerily calm. From her stationary vantage point, Anna noticed the other dolls. They lined the shelves and scattered across the room, their lifeless faces betraying nothing. But Anna felt them. She sensed the hum of something deep within them, a shared consciousness, a collective presence. They were like her. They were people, imprisoned in shells of porcelain and plastic, stripped of their voices and identities. Through the haze of her own terror, Anna's mind pieced together fragments of understanding. Clara wasn't just a doll. She was something far older, something ancient and insidious. And she was multiplying, spreading like a virus through her replicas. Each new doll was another vessel, another prison for a stolen soul. Masha set her newest doll, Anna's twisted likeness, on the table beside her. "I'll take care of you now," she whispered, stroking its hair with small, deliberate movements. "Clara says you'll be happier this way." Inside the shell, Anna's silent scream intensified. "No, Masha, fight it!" But there was no way to reach her. Every ounce of her willpower strained against the suffocating confines of the porcelain body. But it was like trying to move a mountain with a whisper. Time passed in a blur. Hours? Days? Anna had no way of knowing. She was trapped in the endless cycle of Masha's routines, powerless to intervene. At night, the room grew darker, colder, and the shadows seemed to take on lives of their own. Anna could feel Clara's presence even without seeing her. It was in the air, in the walls, in the very fabric of the house. Then, one night, Anna's dormant world shifted. The house fell silent, the oppressive darkness punctuated only by the faint ticking of a clock. Masha was asleep, her small body curled up in bed with one of the dolls clutched tightly in her arms. The other dolls, including Anna, remained in their eerie stillness. And then they began to move. It was subtle at first, a faint twitch of a hand, a shift in the angle of a head. Anna felt it before she saw it. The shared consciousness of the dolls stirring like a hive of wasps. Her own porcelain limbs, though not under her control, started to move in sync with the others. The room filled with a faint, rhythmic creaking as the dolls began to rise. Panic flared in Anna's mind. Whatever was happening, it wasn't natural. The force controlling her body wasn't her own, and it wasn't Clara. It was something else, something collective and primal. A deep, guttural hum resonated in her mind, drowning out her thoughts. The dolls moved in unison, gathering in a circle around Masha's bed. They stared down at her with their unblinking eyes, their presence a silent, suffocating weight. Masha stirred in her sleep, a faint murmur escaping her lips. "Protect her," a voice whispered in Anna's mind. It wasn't hers, but it felt familiar. It was the other dolls, no, the people trapped inside them. Their thoughts bled into hers, a fragmented chorus of despair and defiance. She's ours now, Clara's voice interrupted, sharp and cutting. You are mine. The dolls froze, the tension in the room palpable. Anna felt Clara's presence manifest more fully, a wave of cold malice that swept through the air. A single doll stepped forward from the shadows. Clara herself, her porcelain face flawless despite her destruction in the fire. You think you can stop me? Clara hissed, her voice resonating from everywhere and nowhere. You belong to me. All of you. The collective will of the dolls surged, pushing back against Clara's dominance. Anna felt it like a spark of hope, a flicker of defiance in the endless darkness. The dolls moved as one, closing ranks around Masha, shielding her from Clara's reach. You cannot protect her, Clara snarled, her painted smile twisting into something grotesque. She chose me. She invited me in, and I will never leave. Anna's mind burned with fury. She may have been trapped, powerless in this porcelain prison, but she would not let Clara win. Summoning every ounce of her will, she fought against the invisible chains that bound her. The porcelain around her felt fragile, like an eggshell under pressure. Cracks formed in her vision, spidering across her field of sight. Break it, the collective voice urged. Break the shell. With a deafening mental scream, Anna's willpower surged. The porcelain around her shattered, a blinding flash of light erupting as the shards flew outward. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she moved freely. Her limbs were her own again, her breath hitching in her chest. The other dolls followed suit, their shells breaking apart as the people inside them emerged. The room filled with a cacophony of gasps and cries, the sound of liberation. Clara screamed, her voice a piercing wail of rage and fear. You cannot defeat me, she shrieked. I am eternal. Anna didn't hesitate. She lunged at Clara, tackling the doll to the ground. The force of her will, combined with the collective strength of the others, overwhelmed Clara's form. Her porcelain body cracked and splintered, the malevolent energy within her dissipating like smoke. As the last of Clara's form crumbled, the room fell silent. The oppressive darkness lifted, replaced by a faint warmth. Anna turned to Masha, who was still asleep, her expression peaceful. She approached her daughter, her hands trembling. Masha stirred, opening her eyes. For the first time in days, they were clear and bright. Mommy, Masha whispered, her voice small and uncertain. Anna pulled her into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. I'm here, sweetheart, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm here. The other freed souls stood in silence, their faces pale and haunted. The nightmare was over, but the scars would remain. Outside, the first rays of dawn crept through the windows, bathing the room in light. The house, once filled with darkness and dread, now felt lighter, freer. But as Anna held her daughter close, she couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's influence wasn't truly gone. Something ancient had been disturbed, and its echoes would linger. The dawn light stretched across the town, illuminating streets that had slumbered through the terror of the night. Inside the house, the air felt still, almost fragile, as though the weight of the previous horrors had left cracks in the fabric of reality itself. Anna sat on the floor of Masha's room, cradling her daughter in her arms. The shattered remnants of Clara's porcelain face lay scattered around them, the once malevolent doll reduced to lifeless debris. Masha was quiet, her small body trembling against Anna's chest. She hadn't said much since waking. Anna didn't press her. She was too grateful that her daughter was safe, that the doll's grip on her seemed broken. Yet, deep inside, Anna couldn't shake the unease that lingered, an intangible wrongness she couldn't name. The other freed souls stood awkwardly, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. They were people who had been trapped, like Anna, in the prison of Clara's making. One of them, a man in his 30s, stepped forward. His clothes were tattered, his hands trembling. She's gone, isn't she? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna looked at him, her expression hard to read. I don't know, she admitted. But whatever that thing was, it's not coming back here. The man's gaze fell to the shards of porcelain on the floor. She always comes back, he murmured. She's done it before. Anna's stomach churned. What do you mean? He met her eyes, his own filled with a mix of fear and despair. Clara's not just a doll. She's something else. Something that feeds on the love and attention of the living. She finds lonely children, vulnerable families, and she makes them hers. When she's destroyed, she just moves on, finds another place, another child. A chill ran down Anna's spine. How do you know that? The man hesitated. Because I've seen her before, he said, his voice breaking. Years ago, in another town, she took my little sister. We thought we'd beaten her then too, but she always finds a way back. Anna stared at the man, her mind racing. Could this nightmare truly be over, or was Clara's influence already spreading elsewhere? The thought filled her with a sickening dread. Masha stirred in her arms, breaking Anna's train of thought. Mommy, she whispered, her voice small. Is Clara gone? Anna forced a smile, stroking her daughter's hair. Yes, sweetheart, she's gone. But as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. Could she really be sure? As the morning wore on, the freed souls began to leave the house, each of them reluctant to speak further about their experiences. They shuffled out into the daylight, looking lost and hollow, like ghosts searching for a place to haunt. Anna didn't stop them. She had no answers to give. She spent the rest of the day cleaning up the wreckage. The broken shards of Clara's porcelain body were gathered into a bag, which Anna threw into the trash. She moved through the motions robotically, her thoughts distant. Masha stayed close by her side, refusing to be alone. By nightfall, exhaustion pulled at Anna's body, but sleep eluded her. She lay awake in her bed, her mind replaying the events of the last few days. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind outside, set her nerves on edge. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting. Sometime after midnight, she heard it, a faint tapping sound. Her body went rigid, her breath catching in her throat. The sound came again, soft and rhythmic, like the tapping of tiny fingers against glass. She sat up, her heart pounding. The noise was coming from Masha's room. Anna scrambled out of bed, her fear mounting with every step. She flung open Masha's door, expecting the worst. But the room was quiet, bathed in the pale glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. Masha was sound asleep in her bed, her small form rising and falling with each breath. Relief washed over Anna, but it was short-lived. Her eyes were drawn to the window. On the outside of the glass, faint but unmistakable, was the outline of a tiny handprint. Her heart lurched. She stepped closer, her pulse thundering in her ears. The handprint was smeared, as though something had pressed against the glass and slid downward. Anna's throat tightened. The glass shouldn't have had handprints. Masha couldn't reach that high. She spun around, her eyes scanning the room. For a moment, everything seemed still. But then she saw it, something small and pale lying on the floor near the corner. It was a single shard of porcelain, gleaming in the moonlight. Anna stared at it, her mind racing. She had destroyed Clara. She had burned her, shattered her, thrown the pieces away. Hadn't she? A faint giggle echoed through the room, and Anna's blood ran cold. It was coming from nowhere and everywhere, a sound so quiet it was almost inaudible but unmistakable. It was Clara. Masha, Anna whispered, rushing to her daughter's bed. She shook her gently, her voice trembling. Sweetheart, wake up. Masha stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked up at Anna with confusion. What's wrong, Mommy? Anna didn't answer. She pulled Masha in her arms and carried her out of the room, her heart racing. She didn't know what she was going to do, but staying in the house wasn't an option. They had to leave. As they reached the front door, Anna froze. Standing in the middle of the living room was a new doll. It wasn't Clara, not exactly, but its face was eerily familiar. Its painted smile was soft, almost kind, but its eyes were wide and glassy, following Anna as she moved. She's not done with us, Anna whispered, clutching Masha tightly. We have to go. The doll didn't move, but its presence was suffocating. Anna bolted out the door and into the night, her daughter clinging to her neck. She didn't stop running until they were in the car, the engine roaring to life as she sped down the empty streets. In the rearview mirror, she saw the house growing smaller in the distance. But in one of the upstairs windows, a figure stood, watching. It was the doll. As Anna drove into the darkness, her hands shaking on the wheel, she knew the truth. Clara wasn't bound to the house or the doll. She was something far worse, and she wasn't finished. Not with Anna. Not with Masha. Not with anyone.